Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Meredith Interactive's Lauren Weiner.
Go back, please. Thanks. Well, thank you so much. It's great to be here today to talk about innovation in the social arena. We think it's an incredibly exciting space and one where brands that are associated with magazines have a very, very important role to play. When we first started looking at the social space, of course, we looked at Facebook. Facebook is huge. If it was a country, it would be the fifth largest country in the world. So it's hard to think about social without starting at Facebook as a reference point. And we saw that Facebook did two things incredibly well. One was it was a very, very large environment where anybody could play and anything goes. And two, Facebook got out of the way. You really never see Facebook when you're on Facebook. It's really all about your friends. And those are great things, but as we started to do research among our audience, and many of them are on Facebook, we heard a couple things, and we heard that there was really an opportunity for a much more intimate environment, a bit more of a curated experience, and an environment that was more specific to a particular affinity. So that was really the birth of our social strategy, which is to launch social brands that are focused on specific passion points where Meredith really has an expertise in terms of our content. What I'm going to talk about today in my 8 minutes is Mixing Bowl, which is our first social brand that we're launching. And we started with food because Meredith has an incredible heritage in food. As I'm sure most of you out there have heard the stat, we have one of the best-selling cookbooks out there and the best-selling book right after the Bible and the dictionary. So it's a natural place for us to start. Mixing Bowl, for us, we really think about it as Facebook for foodies. And it's a site we launched in March of 2009. It's completely built around social networking and the features of social networking. And I think what's been very interesting for us as a learning, being a company that owns a lot of magazines with giant reach and mass reach, is that this niche social brand, it has formed groups on their own. And they all formed the groups, by the way. The consumers came and they formed the groups. We didn't set up what the groups were going to be. But we found that the groups started forming around universal needs, things that you would have totally predicted, like what's for dinner? And I only eat sweets, so if you ask people what their two most important decisions are, it's what kind of chocolate am I going to have today for my treat and what do I make for dinner? So no surprise there. But the big surprise, and this kind of echoes what we heard yesterday from David Liu at the Knot, is that we found that this became a place where these unique and diverse groups could really come together and find some like-minded friends. So when I looked at the most active groups yesterday, things like Truckers Delight. This is a place where wives of truckers can go to find comfort food when their truckers are on the road. Or they can find things to pack for their trucker husbands. No joke here. Let's hear it for Ohio. So who knew that Ohio was a center bed of cooking? But apparently there is a big group in Ohio that feels that they are underrepresented in the culinary market. And they have formed this group, and it's not only active online, but they're also having meetups all throughout Ohio. And Comida de Mexico. So we've all heard about ethnicity and Hispanic cuisine, and this is a group just formed around that. These friendships, it's just amazing because they're really deep and they are translating into live experiences. The other thing that's come out of Mixing Bowl is a magazine. And I think we're one of the first digital brands to translate into a magazine. What we found as we were trying to go out there and get group leaders, and every good group leader is a foodie, of course, right? So what do foodies want? Well, we asked them, what would be really motivating for you to go and recruit the most people in your group? They all wanted to be in our magazines. And it was a little tricky to start with the biggest magazines first. So we formed our own magazine, Mixing Bowl, a special interest publication that went out last June. We have a second issue coming out in January because it was so successful. And it's selling for a $4.99 cover price. So I'll talk about this a little bit later when I talk about the business model. But for us, what's really interesting about this social brand that we're launching is it has a life digitally and it has a life in print. And we'd also be crazy if we were going to have it just live on its own and not connect it to the larger social playground. So our strategy for Mixing Bowl in addition to having a discrete site, is really to connect it to everything. And the first place we're looking to connect it to, of course, is Facebook. We launched a Facebook Connect feature, so if you're registered for Facebook, you can use that to register for Mixing Bowl. And that has really skyrocketed our traffic. We have Facebook groups, we have Twitter following groups, we've done an incredible amount of blog outreach. And what we find is that by connecting to that larger social playground, we're driving traffic back to Mixing Bowl, but that's not the only point there. The point is to have a conversation going on about Mixing Bowl throughout the entire social playground. And that's important not just for the brand, but it also becomes important as we talk about monetization. So the business model, and a lot of conversations in the press about what is the business model for social. I think Facebook has had its challenges. I don't think anybody thinks that traditional display advertising is really the model for social. So I'm going to share some thoughts, 6 months into this in terms of what we've found to be our business model. The first one is paid content. Guess what? The magazine, paid content. We made a lot of money on the June issue, and we're doing another one. And the June issue was free of advertising, but it's certainly an amazing opportunity to partner with a marketer in a really big way and do a great 360 program. So we're excited about the magazine. Micro-targeted content is another opportunity. So I talked a little bit about the groups. We also have really active groups on niche food issues. Gluten-free cooking has been such a huge group that it's actually spawned now 3 different groups. And then certainly I Only Eat Sweets is another big group, right? So we've talked to advertisers like General Mills, and they have gluten-free cereals that they're looking to market. What a perfect place to micro-target it on the site. And then for Pillsbury, I Only Eat Sweets. That's a great place to go too. Or, sponsoring a cupcake contest. So this is really, because you have such micro-targeting with the groups, there's an incredible micro-targeting opportunity. And it's not just around specific kinds of food. There's also an amazing local opportunity. Ohio, Chicago, New York, these local groups are just blooming all over the place. And I know this is a trend that we're seeing and hearing about in other markets like in the marriage space, but it's also a trend in cooking. Tyson's sponsoring a chicken group. So micro-targeting, really important. Sponsorships have been an interesting topic of conversation. We have Facebook apps, we have Facebook pages. There's lots of ways that we can experiment with sponsorships and make them 360 in the space, so that's definitely a business model. And then the most interesting one for us, and I'd say the biggest learning as we've been in this space, has been brand advocacy. Magazines have always had a huge halo effect for brands because we're such trusted environments. So we've always rubbed off in a very positive way. So it's natural that as you start to think about niche social brands on the same affinities that your magazines are based on, that you think about brand advocacy. So we've had some learnings from this. Our first brand advocacy play was with Kraft on Boca Burger. And we set up a profile for Boca Girl. She was literally called that, and we put a picture of her there. And what we were really trying to do here was live by the values in a social playground, which is friendship. This is all about friendship. So we tried to make Boca Girl someone that you'd want to be friends with and have her live by the principles of which you treat your friends. So the first one is transparency. You're not going to go up to someone and try to make friends and tell them the wrong name. I mean, that might be something that a guy's trying to do to pick up a date in a weird situation, but that's not something you're doing if you're trying to be friends. So definitely identifying yourself as a brand advocate is key. Building reputation. What we found being a brand advocate with Boca Girl is that for every post that she had about Boca, we had her post many, 19 posts that were useful and helpful in answering questions for every one post that was really about her product. And then truth in messaging, everything had to be very much in line with Kraft's messaging. So those are just a couple of the learnings. I'm getting the time sign. So you have to see me privately to share the rest of the learnings. But hopefully this was giving you a little bit of a taste of our social strategy in terms of the power of niche brands, how niche brands can play in the larger social playground, and how to make money from them. Thank you.